As calls for a Gaza ceasefire increase, there is the looming question of what exactly happens after this war eventually ends. In a shocking interview, Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom said a two-state solution is not an option, something the United States has been promoting for years.
Is there still a chance for a two-state solution?
I think it's about time for the world to realize the Oslo paradigm failed on the 7th of October, and we need to build a new one. And in order to build a new one...
Does that new one include the Palestinians living in a state of their own? Is that what it includes?
I think the biggest question is what type of Palestinians are on the other side. This is what Israel realized on the 7th of October.
Though?
The answer is absolutely no, and I'll tell you why. Israel knows today, and the world should know now, the reason the Oslo Accords failed is because the Palestinians never wanted to have a state next to Israel. They want to have a state from the river to the sea.
So the two-state solution is dead?
Why are you obsessed with a formula that never worked?
Joining me now is Daniel Levy, former Israeli peace negotiator and president of the U.S. Middle East Project. And Daniel, this feels like a very big deal. I think it's been clear to anybody who's been observing Benjamin Netanyahu, who held up that picture. Let's look at it. He held up a greater, Eretz Israel picture in the UN that showed no Palestine, just in Israel, that he's against a two-state solution. But how big of a deal is it for that to seem to be the official policy now of the government of Israel?
It is the official policy. It doesn't date back, Joy, as you know, to the interview of the ambassador where I am in the United Kingdom. That is the official policy of the Israeli government. No Israeli government, actually, has ever endorsed two states, has ever endorsed the 1967 lines. So it's refreshing, perhaps, not so much that the ambassador said this, but that the world is paying attention. I'll read you the guidelines of Israel's governing coalition. The Jewish people have an exclusive right to all parts of the land of Israel and to settlement in all parts, including Judea and Samaria. So what we have here is that the official position of Benjamin Netanyahu's government is from the river to the sea, only Jews can be free. I know people have heard another chant, but that is the official position of the Israeli government. And I know that President Biden recently mentioned the name of one of the ministers, Ben-Gvir. But it's too easy to hide behind one extremist minister. This is the position of the entire government. By the way, it was Netanyahu who brought these extremists, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, together at his home to form a united party to enable them to get into the parliament and to later join his coalition. And I think the follow-up question, if one sentence, Joy, the follow-up question, which that interviewer didn't ask, but I think which every interviewer should ask when they're talking to a member of this government is, if that is your official position, then what is your answer for giving equality and rights to all the people who live in this one state, or do you run an apartheid state, which is the reality?
Well, and that would be the fall. And for those in the audience who are not familiar with the terminology, Netanyahu often says Judea and Samaria. That means the West Bank. And they refer to it as Judea and Samaria. They're biblical terms. And just to clarify for those who do not know who Ben-Gvir is, could you just briefly tell us who he is?
Itamar Ben-Gvir, you're right to ask me to clarify that, Joy. He is currently the Minister of National Security. Essentially, it's a glorified Minister of Police. It's a senior position. It's a war cabinet position. He has been prosecuted in the past for hate crimes, for racism, for violence. If people remember, there was an Israeli Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, assassinated. He was one of the leaders of the incitement right in the early days of Oslo. But like I said, we shouldn't focus on him. We should focus on the entirety of the government, which has endorsed that position.
Yeah. And by the way, I should note that one of the slogans of the Likud party, which this ambassador and Bibi Netanyahu belong to, is from the river to the sea. That is actually one of their slogans. Let me ask you the same question you asked, which is the natural follow-up question, because that was what I thought. If the answer is not to give Palestinians their own state, and Palestine already is represented in the UN, the UN recognizes that they have a state. If that's not the answer, to me, the only other options are expulsion, mass expulsion of Palestinians to kick them out of the land, which, kick them all out, or apartheid. Because I don't see what other, unless it's living on some sort of reservations or Bantustans, I don't understand what the other option is.
Right. I mean, this is the indigenous people being driven into reservations, but the land here is very small. I don't want to continue to draw an analogy with anywhere where there was enough land to drive the indigenous people into reservations. But you're absolutely right. And the debate inside Israel, increasingly today, is between those who are calling for ethnic cleansing. That's the call we've heard prior to October 7th, but increasingly during this war, we have heard senior ministers calling for the mass displacement of Palestinians. They call it a second Nakba, because remember, the majority of the Palestinian community in the foundation of Israel were driven from their land. When people look at Gaza, why do so many people live in refugee camps? It's because they were expelled from their homes inside Israel. So it's the call for ethnic cleansing, or it's the continuation of living under a regime that has been legally designated, not just by Palestinians, by Israeli human rights organizations, by Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, as a regime that meets the legal definition of apartheid. The alternative to that is give everyone equal rights or have a genuine deoccupation and sovereign Palestinian state. And of course, you still have to address the question of Palestinian refugees and those living inside Israel who face structural discrimination.
And I will note that there's been a lot of violence on the West Bank. A mosque was desecrated during the raids by Israel. There's been a lot of issues in the West Bank as well. Let me ask you about the Biden-Bibi relationship. Because it seems that admitting this out loud, even though, again, it's been fairly clear this is his position, it is, in a sense, an embarrassment to Biden. And I thought that it was sort of a thing inside of Israeli government, a truism, that you never distance from the Americans. You never kick the Americans in the face, because the Americans are the best friend and are the supplier of arms and the supplier of aid.
Well, this is the thing. Prime Minister Netanyahu, over 20 years ago, during a brief pause when he wasn't in office, made a comment that America is an easy thing to lead. And I fear that that is exactly how he feels today with the Biden administration. We've seen the visit now of Jake Sullivan in the region. We've seen the recent comments of President Biden. But those, I don't want to dismiss them entirely, but they still feel entirely inadequate to the moment at hand. They're saying to the Israelis, kill less civilians. That's not going to bring back the more than 7,500 children, 17,000 civilians killed already. Of course, the 1,200 Israelis from October 7th will never come back. But those statements are, unfortunately, I don't think going to change the way Israel is conducting this war. As long as the war goes on, the humanitarian catastrophe created by Israel, and it's horrendous, cannot be treated. And so the missing words are, if you don't do this, then we will stop supplying weapons and we will oversee those weapons we've already supplied.
The other option, of course, the Ottoman Empire had Jews, Christians, and Muslims all living in peace. It can be done. Daniel Levy, thank you very much. And that is tonight's Reid Out.